All right, well, welcome everybody. My name is Denise, and I am feeling like super hopeful right now. So tell me if any of this resonates. You can pop it in the chat. But I just got my first vaccine not too long ago, and spring is in the air, although I live in Colorado, so it's sort of on and off. But I am feeling hopeful and excited about possibilities. And so, today, in this next hour, I am giving you full permission to dream again. It has been a tough year, and I sort of feel like we need to give each other permission to dream. So I'm giving you permission to dream. Here's what I want you all to do. If you don't have a favorite beverage in front of you, I want you to grab one. You can grab beer, wine, herbal tea, doesn't matter. Get something that brings you joy. And I want you to find a comfortable seat. If I do my job well, I want you to walk out of this next hour feeling inspired. And so anyhow, y'all get a glass of whatever. And also make sure you grab your phone, because I'm going to be doing a huge download of information in the next hour. You're going to want to snap pics along the way. And I will also be sending out a recording later, but it's super helpful to have all this information at your fingertips. So anyhow, without further ado, welcome. And this is Masters looking at France and Italy. So let's check out the next slide. So I'm excited today to introduce to you two institutions. One's in Italy, one's in France. We have University of Cattolica, which has different campuses throughout Italy. Their main one's in Milan. And then also the Burgundy School of Business, BSB. And they have campuses in Dijon, Lyon, and Paris. And you're going to hear from both of them. Now, if you have tuned into other events through Affordable Degrees Abroad, you probably heard a lot of institutions that were in English-speaking countries. So we had looked at Ireland, we looked at New Zealand, and also UK. So I'm super excited to be able to share with you programs that are in countries where English is not the predominant language. Americans are usually surprised to know that there are a lot of undergrad and especially grad programs in English in these countries and some other countries in Europe where English is not the predominant language. So I'm really excited to be able to share these with you today. All right, so as we are waiting for a few more folks to jump into the Zoom room, I want you to pop into the chat, make sure everyone can see it. So hit everyone. But where have you studied? Where have you been abroad? And if you were part of that 2020 cohort that were planning on going abroad and everything got canceled, pop that in too. And if you haven't been abroad, no worries. Pop in, I haven't yet, but I'm super excited to explore, blah, blah, blah. So pop it all into the chat. Make sure everyone can see so we can start to get a sense of where people have been. Awesome. We have Madrid so far. Italy, woohoo! And somebody's from Lebanon, studied in the US, haven't been to Europe, but excited to do it. We've got somebody who studied at Cattolica already, but not studied abroad, but lots of conferences abroad. Right, shout out to Diane. All right. And haven't been abroad yet, but Megan, I'm so happy you're here. Woohoo, backpack through Italy. Awesome, guys. And so the reason I do this and the reason I want to do it in the chat and so everyone can see is so we get to inspire and uplift each other. So keep it coming. This is really awesome. All right, let's move on to the next poll. I have another quick question around what you want to study. We're going to make sure we can try to align best we can. So what is it that you're wanting to really grow your career with? What are those elements that you would like to study? So looks like, oh, somebody was in Ireland. So pop that also into the chat. I just want to make sure we've got some, we can talk to those areas where you're interested. Enology, we've got wine, art management, art curation, not sure, bachelor's in marketing, art and food. Great. All right. All right, so Joe and Aisha, keep noticing food industry. Yeah, so today will be great for a lot of you. Savannah, I noticed you put public health. That's probably the only one we're not going to hit today. All those other ones are going to talk more directly to these other areas. All right, so let's keep moving. All right, so quick about me. Some of you already know me, some I'm new. My name is Denise Cope. I am president of Affordable Degrees Abroad. I am blessed with 20 years of experience in higher ed, and a lot of that was in international education. And on my watch, I have sent 4,000 students abroad to 150 universities abroad. And I personally have lived and worked in a number of countries, and so this is something really near and dear to my heart. And I want to tell you really quick about what my mission is with Affordable Degrees Abroad. My goal really is to just open US students' eyes to, there's so many amazing quality, affordable programs abroad, just making sure you know what's out there. And I want to help to be a guide, because there can be a lot. So how do you know what's good and what's a good fit? All right, so the folks you're going to meet today on the call are Aisha from Cattolica in Italy, and you're also going to meet Joe, who's from BSB in France. Now, Joe is actually DC based, and Aisha's in Milan. Let's give her in the chat, give her a little love. It is 2 in the morning there, so she got up out of her jammies to be with us today. So let's send her a little love and thanks for doing that. Thank you, everybody. All right, let's keep moving. So today, here's what we're up to in the next hour. We're going to talk about a value of a master's degree abroad, like why should a US student even consider this? We're going to do a deep dive into these 2 Italian and French universities and looking at their masters. We'll talk about financing your degree abroad, and then we'll look to, are you a good candidate? I want to make sure you've got a next step checklist. And we've reserved 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. Now, anytime during this session, you can pop a question in Q&A. Make sure you pop it in. You'll notice on the bottom bar, you see the little Q&A thing. That's where the questions go. So make sure you pop the question in there. We're going to use the chat feature in a different way. So chat is really for just uplifting and creating community. So at any point of this, if you just are like, oh my God, I didn't know this, this is amazing, so inspired by XYZ, whatever, just pop it into the chat. It's a way for us as a community to start to support each other. Okay, so let's keep moving. All right, the value of a degree abroad. So why would you do a degree abroad in the first place? One of the questions I always get from US students is it really cheaper to do a degree abroad? Now, I will say as a general rule of thumb, the answer to that question is yes. However, there are caveats within here. There still are good deals in the United States. And generally speaking, I find that an abroad degree creates a lot of great value. So price points can be anywhere from $0 tuition dollars, which are Germany and Norway, to all the way up to like, I don't know, 45,000. And those tend to be more in like UK, especially in London and Sydney. But everything in between. And so we'll start to look at some of those price points today when we start to look at Italy and France. The second question I always get is this a real degree? So let me tell you the tricks to know how to assess quality. And honestly, this is true for US degrees too. But because we're talking abroad, I want to make sure you've got the tools to know. So first of all, you have to throw out world news and world reports. You're going to look, you have to find degrees that are in one of two categories. One would be it's validated by QS or Times Higher Ed, and Católica is in this category. Or it is validated through an industry accreditation. So a business school, you would look at AACSB, EQUIS, AMBA. So you're looking for those industry accreditations. So you want to make sure as you're looking at abroad degrees, it falls into one of these categories. Now, I know all of you on the call are here because you already have a global mindset. Obviously, doing a degree abroad is longer than doing, the semester abroad. So you basically gain a lot more global skills. And a lot of these programs, especially the programs today, you gain a strong global network. And that's not only global network of your cohort, but a global network in regards to some industry connections. And then finally, a lot of students really want to work overseas. And so some countries have something called a post-study work visa. Today, we're going to talk about something different. Italy and France have something called a temporary residence permit. These are 12 months long. And basically, after you finish your degree, you get 12 months residency. And during that time, you use that to find a job in order to transition to a work visa. So that's sort of how it works in those countries. All right, so if you've attended my workshops before, you've seen this slide, but I'm just going to go over some basic information. There are 400-ish international universities that accept FAFSA loans. And these same also accept 529 college plans. Many US students are surprised to know that. And then there's also a database called Weems database, and there's, I don't know, probably 500-ish universities on there that also accept GI Bill. I've got more information on my blog for these. I will say that today's institutions are slightly different. They do not accept any of these. And I'm going to tell you why you should still look at them. So let's move on to the next slide. All right, so why would you choose a non-FAFSA approved university? So generally speaking, you've got, these 400-ish universities that take FAFSA, and they tend to start at around $14,000 and go all the way to $45,000. The ones that tend to be more affordable have not gone through this process. It's not because they're bad programs, it takes a lot of work to do FAFSA. So that's sort of why. So a lot of the ones that are non-FAFSA institutions have really affordable price points. We're looking at anywhere from $0 to $16,000 a year. And on average, around $8,000 a year. So that just sort of gives you an overview. And I'm sort of excited to be able to share some of this with you because I think this just lets you sort of understand the complete system. All right, so tonight we are looking at France and Italy. And I am, as you can see from the map, we've got all of these locations that these institutions are based. And I'm excited to share because you know already, right? This is an awesome location to be. You are Central Europe. All right, let's keep going, Reese. And a lot of people who, if you've already been in Italy and France, pop that in there because you're going to probably agree with a lot of this here. Why would you choose Italy and France? You've got vibrant cultures, unparalleled beauty. There's a lot of student cities, and it's a young vibe. So for example, Lyon is one of the cities for BSB. Lyon was featured recently by French university students. That's their top #1 city in France for student life, because it's a young city, lots of student vibe. So a lot of these places have really great student life. And there's also a hub for various industries in Italy and France, particularly the industries that we are looking at today. And both Joe and Aisha are going to share some of that information with us later. So I want to make sure you've got an understanding also about public versus private universities in France and Italy, and also program structure. So what I have to say about Italy and France here actually is going to also be true for Spain and Portugal. But today we're only focusing on Italy and France. So you may have heard about public institutions in France or public institutions in Italy. These have a really affordable price point, FYI. These are around 2,000 euros, so $2,600 a year for tuition. However, these publics are very large and they tend to be extremely difficult to navigate. Not only the systems, but the academic systems can be very different than what we're accustomed to. And so generally speaking, for France and Italy, I tend to recommend privates because A, it's still a really good value, and B, you've got smaller cohorts, better support, and many of these have excellent industry connections, so can really like put you into some experiences with industry. And today we're going to look at master's programs that are 1 year, and by 1 year, we're looking at usually 12 months, or 2 years, which are 24 months. And again, a lot of these are going to have industry experience incorporated. Oh, and I should mention, for those of you who realize this is on master's, but undergrad is a 3-year. So you end up saving money and you get a degree, an undergrad degree in 3 years. You start immediately in your major. Okay, so today we're going to talk about tuition, cost of living, FAFSA, GRE, blah, blah, blah. So tuition at privates for Italian and French institutions generally are going to run you $7,000 to $16,000 a year. And cost of living is generally going to be $11,000 to $14,000, depending on if you're in a, maybe, Paris is going to be more expensive, let's say, than Dijon. And then, as a reminder, FAFSA and 529 plans do not apply to these institutions, but what I like about them, they tend to have more affordable price points. And yes, you have to use savings, but the good news is you don't end up in debt at the end of this. And let's do a little celebration in regards to no GRE or no GMAT, because guess what? That can be a big barrier for a number of students. So yay, you've just like dissolved that particular barrier. And as we already discussed, there are many masters in English in these countries. All right, so I'm going to do a little COVID update, but Aisha and Joe, feel free to jump in here if I'm missing any information. So US students may enter the EU with a student visa. You will need a negative COVID test for entry. So that means if you're thinking about fall, you can come to the country in fall, assuming we're on this trajectory, I'd say, of where we are. Things don't get worse. There, like here in the States, vaccinations are occurring, albeit not as quickly as they are here, but those are some of the next steps. And I think a lot of US students are surprised to know that, guess what? There can be quality and affordable healthcare abroad we're just so used to healthcare being so bloody expensive here. But that's one of the benefits, I think, of doing a master's abroad is usually an access to quality, affordable healthcare. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Aisha, and she's going to talk a little bit more about Cattolica.
Thank you. Ciao. Ciao and hello, everyone. I have the challenge of 8 minutes to take you through the largest private university in Europe. So we're talking something big, and 8 minutes is not a lot. So what really I'm excited to do is just start with conversations and get those conversations going. I'd be more than happy to, if you could just pick up on certain words, topics, which we then obviously can discuss in the Q&A or through separate Zoom calls or emails. But really, you know, in the short time, just pay attention to any sort of hooks, as I call them. And so we can then explore and take the conversation further. So if I could get the first slide up and going. So this is not to get you a geography lesson as such. There's one key message here. First of all, the point when you're choosing a university abroad is not obviously just about, I mean, of course, tuition is a huge factor. Obviously, we're focusing a lot of that. You may have personal reasons, personal connections, cultural connections. But ultimately, when you've broken it down to maybe a country, one of the top tips that I give students is think about the location. How is it related to the subject that you're interested in? So what do I mean by that? So for example, do you want to study something which is business related or economics? Well, why not do that in the economic capital of the country you're interested in? So in this case, that would be Milan. So that's where I'm located. Do you want to study something, for example, related to, and a lot of you have mentioned this in the chat, related to food and wine, or in general, the agribusiness sector? Well, you wouldn't want to do that in Milan. You want to do that in the heart of the Italian food valley, and that's where Piacenza and Cremona are. These are two distinct towns, but we place them together because Piacenza is sort of manages over Cremona. But this is where we are up north. So this is where the industries are. This is where you want to go easily to get your field visits and your internships and your jobs afterwards. If you're, so one of you also mentioned public health. In general, if you want to do, for example, medicine or anything related to healthcare management, for example, that we offer, you want to do that, for example, in Rome, political capital. Okay, fair enough. Eternal city, obviously, everyone knows Rome, but Cattolica there has, for example, a hospital. So again, just in general, Italy is obviously, it's not a big country as the United States, but there are very strategic locations based on the subject that you want to study. And just as a little shout out as to Milan, just because Denise just earlier mentioned, for example, that Lyon, I think it was, that France was, you know, the favorite city. Milan is ranked #1 as the best city within the country for international student experience. 3 airports, you know, most English speaking people, surroundings, offices. So that's also something to consider. How international do you need it to be simultaneously, at how culturally national do you want, you know, how much experience of the national place you want to get. But that was just a little shout out to Milan as well. All right, next slide, please. All right, I just thought we should take a step back and think about not just this university, but the two countries. Well, obviously we're talking here one continent as well. I just thought it was interesting because for the couple of these reasons, we have a huge long-standing connection, we as Italy, with the United States. Yesterday marked the 160th cultural relations, diplomatic relations, and in fact, our current Minister of Foreign Affairs is in the United States visiting because of that. I just think Italy is the country that receives the most students in study abroad, in terms of study abroad, so coming for a semester. But really, I would argue that coming for a full-time degree, or in any case, a postgrad program, really allows you to scratch underneath the surface. If you really maximize experience, you really gain that cultural IQ that employers are so desperately looking for. Considering that the United States is a key commercial partner for Italy, it's the country where we export most to, after Germany and France. And guess what we export? Yes, machinery, yes, chemicals, but no, surprise, surprise, food and drinks. Major commercial relations there. So if you think about the agri-food business, especially, despite the pandemic and the economic crisis that brought on, we were all queuing under the rain, sunshine, or snow, despite the lockdown, to queue for food. It's the only industry that has actually been thriving, and is even increasing. It's not just survived. So definitely for those of you that are looking at this, there's just so much need for international dimensions that you bring. I genuinely believe, and we have experience of this, that someone from the United States with their cultural baggage, because Italy is a non-saturated panorama, will be able to then not only, of course, study, but actually access employment on a whole different range, compared to maybe some other countries, and certainly from a, let's say, standard Italian perspective, just because the country desperately really needs you. Here on Why Cattolica, this deserves like a webinar of its own. Essentially, in Italy, there is really a lot of high good education institutions. It's about the right fit. Everyone's going to say they're the best. Everyone's going to claim La Dolce Vita and all this, all the attraction of Italy, but ultimately you need to go beyond that. We, particularly because we're private, we invest a lot in services. Again, picking up on what Denise said, between public and private, assuming you do require some extra services as an international student, Cattolica definitely tries its best compared to some other national institutions to invest in that. What do I mean by services? By just not only having English speaking staff as a first step, but to visa support, healthcare, of course, or orientation events, but thinking about employability, tutors at every single one-year specializing master program. In thinking about employment, we are ranked #1 in the country for student employer connections. Granted, no university is a job agency, but in terms of investing and getting liaison with a couple of industries, and we do that relevant to your course. Academically, internationally, if you haven't heard about us, employers have. We have 13 subjects within some really famous rankings, QS. So you know that you also have that academic recognition. So that's just a couple of slides to show you, again, just some of the famous names and employer opportunities. Just wrapping up to the next one. What programs we offer? I couldn't list 33 programs for you, all right? So these are the ones that we have. The key point here is that it's multidisciplinary, so you don't just focus on one subject, and that in Italy, as in France and some other countries, there are 2 years and 1 year programs as well. So we obviously, let's discuss in a separate moment what's the difference, but you know that you can tailor whatever subject according to what you need. All right. Applications are online. Obviously, happy to chat about that in a separate moment, but just so you know, everything is online and it's fast, and there are still options open for 2021. And I prefer Denise. So obviously, the what she said about the figures that she gave you, we fall into that. The key thing here is that we have our own scholarships. You're right, we don't do FAFSA. You're right, we don't do the GI Bill, but we do have our own partial scholarships. So certainly worth discovering as well into detail. And essentially, those are my contacts. So again, these will be given. I know we'll be distributing these again out, but for now, that's just a little snapshot into Cattolica. So thank you for the attention there. And I think it's over to Joe, I guess.
Yes, I think it is over to me. I don't see me yet. Maybe I won't see me. But thank you very much for, I can attest to, I had worked for many years with the crew at Cattolica, and I can say that they offer a fantastic educational experience, not only for Italians, which is what they're known for in their home country, but also for visiting students. BSB, the Burgundy School of Business, I think it offers a very unparalleled and unique opportunity because they are really thinking about how to be a school that is diverse and international and outside of what a traditional French institution focus is, which is really serving the local community. Not to say that they don't, but they're trying to think of themselves as an institution that's serving the greater business community, which does serve France's interests as far as growing economic opportunity for the country as a whole. We can go on to the next slide. Denise mentioned this earlier, but I did want to point out that BSB is both AACSB and EQUIS accredited, which means that they fall among the top 1% of business schools in the world. As far as reputation is concerned, you will not find them in US News and World Report, but they are ranked within the top 15 business schools in France. They've had a 5-place improvement over the last 7 years, mainly from investiture and from growth and program, especially English-speaking programs, ranked in the top 100 of the Financial Times for 4 years in a row. And they were among the first 30 schools to obtain the Bienvenue en France label from Campus France, which means that they are seen as being ideal, welcoming bodies and institutions for visiting scholars in France. So going along to the next slide. The other thing that I'd like to point out is that, you know, as with many institutions in Europe, BSB is very old. It was founded in 1899 as a school for business studies. However, that does not mean that the institution just stopped developing in 1899. As you can see, the facilities on campus are actually very modern. What's kind of cool about the top picture here is that that to the very right kind of sandstone facade is the original building. And what they've done is they've sort of built the university and the additional buildings around it. One campus that wasn't mentioned, we also have a campus in Beaune. And for those of you that are familiar with wine or have an interest in wine, one of the greatest assets of studying at the Burgundy School of Business is that you are in the heart of the greatest wine producing region in the world, Burgundy, both white and red. Dijon being the economic capital of that region. So as far as industry connection, you would be very well connected to not only producers of wine, but all of the great conglomerates like Moet, so LVMH, that large house, luxury brands, all have their predominant seats in Dijon. And Beaune is the traditional heart of wine and Burgundy business. It's where the Hospice de Beaune, so where they represent all of the vintners from Burgundy, and they run an auction every year to sort of establish the global prices for wine in that year based on what's been produced and demand. But all of the campuses are right in the center of the cities, so you don't need to own a car. All of the cities, Dijon, Lyon, Beaune, Paris, obviously have excellent public transport systems that are very affordable for students. Most of the attractions campus where you would live are all within walking distance. That's one great asset about Dijon, even though it's an economic capital of the region. It's a very small city. You can walk across most of the city sort of on your own, so it's very easy to navigate, very easy to live in without feeling overwhelmed or out-expensed, as is true, say, in Paris, for example. Moving along to the next slide. Here's an overview of the programs that we offer. As you can see, it's a business school, so they're very heavy in accounting, finance, marketing. Luxury marketing is sort of a specification because of that connection to fashion, wine, high-end food, consumer goods, human resources, data science, arts and cultural management. That's the program that primarily takes place in Lyon. And then wine and spirits business, which is something that makes it very unique. It's a program that allows you access to the greatest the greatest houses that produce wine in the world. You actually have guest speakers from those houses. You get to visit those places. We'll go on to the next slide if you don't mind. And that's part of the reason in looking at these price points here. In the master's program, most of them are 14,000 for a one-year program. They are one-year programs, except for the master's in management. The MBA in wine and spirits business is significantly more expensive. It's also very specialized. That 1 year includes class trips to New York, to Germany, to various other wine producing regions in France. So hence the larger price tag. It also includes help with specific industry internships and job placement services. However, going on to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more. One thing that Burgundy does very, very well in the School of Wine and Business and in its general school is it really prides itself on making resources available to all of its students so that they can find an internship and eventually gain access to a job that helps them fulfill the promise of what they've learned and how they've grown through the process of their degree. We can go on to the next slide. Also, I'd like to point out that BSB is ready for international students. It has a dedicated international student services team on campus that can help you with every question from visa issues to housing, to healthcare, to travel, to figuring out how you would communicate what you've learned within the French context to a corporation that's based in the United States, or one that's based in China, or one that's based in Australia. They have a team available to help you understand that. They really want you to be included as part of campus life and part of the city life. And it's a very diverse student population as well. Some of the programs have as many as 26 different nationalities represented within the program, which means that you're not sort of pigeonholed as a cohort of American students or a cohort of Chinese students, or you wouldn't be in classes because it's English language that there would be no French students. It's truly serving the entire population of the university. We can move on to the next slide. And I mentioned a little bit about the career help. So BSB has twice annual job fairs where they invite in various representatives of the 1,500 plus corporations and companies that work directly with BSB that are actively recruiting BSB students for employment. That goes along with the job matching. We also have an extensive network of over 16,000 alumni that are more than happy to share their experience with you and to try to give you some insight into how you can translate your experience to potential employment in the future. We'll go on to the next slide. And speaking of that, I just wanted to highlight one recent graduate, Anna Raymond. She completed the MBA in Wine and Spirits Management in 2020. She's now a functional consultant with Amici Solutions, which provides like restaurant and warehouse management for the hospitality industry. She started off working as a server in restaurants, decided that she had a passion for wine and spirits, but didn't always want to work front of house hours. So at night and at the weekend when all of her friends were having fun, and knew that wasn't a long-term career for her. So she went and did the MBA. Right out of the MBA, she worked for 2 importers in the New York area. But because a big component of the training is understanding cutting edge software and analytics and automation within industry, she was able to transition to a technology firm because she had both the industry experience, but also the knowledge about how to use CRM and other tools to help in her career. And that was me. This is my information here. We'll obviously share it with you again at the end, but I look forward to your questions. And yeah, thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you, Joe. Can everybody see me, or I can still see Joe there. So anyhow, I had some technical difficulties. Can everybody hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, Joe.
We
can you hear
can.
me?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so let me just make sure y'all feel really confident in regards to what your next steps are. So I think if you're serious about doing any type of master's degree abroad, you want to make sure it's the right fit. So how do you do that? You discover your top 5 programs. So this can be by attending webinars. I offer a bunch of webinars during the academic year. You can search databases. I personally like study.eu and mastersportal.com. You can examine rankings. Again, this is QS and Times Higher Ed. And also just ask a guide. You can ask somebody who knows stuff along the way. Now you've got 2 best friends for BSP and also Cattolica. So reach out to your new friends. You're going to research entry requirements. Assuming you already have a bachelor's degree, getting and some industry experience, you can find the right program. But again, make sure you know what those entry requirements are and understand the finances. What are you getting yourself into? What is going to be the total cost for both tuition and living expenses? Do you need FAFSA or 529 plans or not? Maybe private loans, or maybe you can use savings and use university scholarships to offset some of those costs. So there's sort of some pros and cons on both sides of those fences, but do the homework so you know. And next slide. All right, so I just want to make sure before we get to Q&A, you've got everybody's contact information. This is my contact information. And I also do a free discovery call, which is a 20-minute call if you just want to brainstorm. And I have something called the Graduate Guide Abroad, which is on my website. Sort of have to scroll down a little bit, but it gives you some overviews of really affordable places to look. So make sure if you do nothing else, just download that guide today. All right, and take a snapshot of this. This is Joe's and Aisha's information. So if you have questions afterwards, just reach out to them and you can ask questions about any of the programs that they've covered today. All right, so now is the time for Q&A. So I'm gonna pop open the Q&A, see where we are, but looks like, so somebody was asking about the deadline. And some of the deadlines, it looks like, are April 15th, which is tomorrow. Are there other opportunities as well? And I know, Aisha, you put something in here. Is there anything else you want to talk about deadlines, Aisha?
That it's really worth considering, as in, it sounds obvious and logic, but really just check, don't take it for granted, because on a slide we need to try and sort of get the average deadline for most programs, but with 33 programs you can understand that there's different deadlines. So whilst April 15th was a marker point, it's by no means the only deadline sometimes. So please, definitely worth getting in touch or checking on the website per program, just to clarify that. Yeah.
Great. And as I understand, Aisha, there's some that are in June as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And essentially, just to understand the logic behind deadlines, it's because of visas. It's not necessarily that the university wants to be harsh and not get you in because we'd have you till the last day. It's about giving you and us enough time to get you prepared, because the visa aspect, I think both our universities, in terms, like the ones participating today, do a good job in getting full support there. But in general, especially for us Mediterraneans, the visa process can be long and it can be daunting. So to not panic and have enough time to do all the steps, that's why it's important to stick to deadlines, just for that one small but big reason.
BSB offers rolling admissions even for international students. However, I would agree with Aisha that the issue would be for 2021, and also COVID has made the visa application process a little bit more onerous and difficult. I would say realistically, probably in the best case scenario, would have until the end of June to be able to sort of be accepted and conceivably go through the entire student visa process. But that would be, you would have to have a lot of stars align to make that work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it can be really aggressive if you've never done the visa process. You just have to, it can take a while. All right, so everybody, if you've got a question, pop it in. Looks like we've got one. Ivana was asking, when are the visa applications open to apply for an Italian student visa?
All right. Well, you don't have to worry about that, because the first step is you need to apply to the university, and then only if you confirm an offer at the university to apply for a visa. Obviously, there is a time frame, which is the summer, which means basically June, July are two hugely important months, and August. But again, the very first step is applying to the university itself. And then once you have that, you get all your offer letters to take to the local embassy or to your consulate, and then start the visa process. So first university, second visa.
Great. I'm going to go so pop your questions in. Carmen has arts management question, which is a more niche question, but wanted to know if it involved art curation and art history. Joe, did you want to talk about the art management program?
Yeah, I mean, so it really is intended to prepare students to be able to choose the direction. So there's definitely an art curation, art history component of that, because many students that complete this program end up being curators of museums or galleries or programs attached to museums or institutions of higher learning even. However, there is a business aspect to this. Well, many also go and become like agents representing houses, auction houses, acquisitions for private individuals or for philanthropic funds, etc. So there are many different paths you can take, but yes, you definitely will be taking art history and art curation as part of the overall degree process. It wouldn't be as in depth as a 4-year undergraduate or a PhD, obviously, because it is more tied to the applicable rather than the theoretical.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Carmen, for your question. So we've got some time here before it's the end. So let me know if you've got anything else, because we've got both Joe and Aisha here for the next few minutes. So if you've got any question about any of those particular programs or about sustainability or anything like that, let's see. Savannah asked, do most US students seeking a grad degree meet entry requirements at your universities? I mean, it's a good question. I'd say a lot, Savannah, is going to depend on which program you're applying to. But I don't know. Joe, do you want to?
I was just going to say, it really it's contingent on program. An applied science degree obviously would have a lot of prerequisites that you would have had to complete in the US or any other country before you could enter that program at a master's level. As far as basic requirements, usually it's around GPA and completion of degree. And I would assume that most students that are applying for this probably meet those qualifications. At least in my experience, they exceed those qualifications. So yeah, I would think it's contingent on program.
Mm-hmm. And Savannah, as a rule of thumb, particularly with the science programs, you sort of have to come with a bachelor's in sort of that field. It's in order to do it. If you're going the other direction, let's say you have a science degree and you want to get into, I don't know, business or some social science, it's easier to do that leap versus needing to have those science courses under your belt already.
Yeah, the masters in business management and then the masters that we have in wine and spirits business, they both have work experience requirements. So you have to have demonstrated professional experience. It doesn't necessarily have to have been in wine and spirits, but you have to be able to demonstrate that you've had several years of either being employed within a field or entrepreneurial in some way.
Great. Thank you very much. And Carmen had a follow-up question in regards to Cattolica, and she asked, is it the same for
Okay.
Cattolica? There are curatorial components to the syllabus.
All right. So that was, I think, related to the arts management
That's right.
program, right? Yes, similar, absolutely, to BSB's program. I think, again, obviously, you need to check the curriculum of both, because everyone calls themselves in one title, and then the curriculum has the nitty gritty of the details. But I think the general sensation I have, at least for ours, is that it is a Faculty of Economics program. So there's a huge stress on the management side of things. It's definitely not fine art, and it is really the financial, the economic, the managerial part of cultural institutions. Art exhibitions as the ultimate example, but cultural institutions obviously go well beyond art exhibitions and whatnot. So worth looking into the curriculum of both and seeing really sort of which one speaks out to you more and which ones, because considering it is a master's level, and you do need to come with a good, strong familiarity at it, because it's not your bachelor degree that you're starting for the first time. Which one do you feel most confident on? Because obviously you need to affront those topics already to a pretty high academic level. And I got to say that we also offer it both in 2-year program, which is more theoretical, and the 1 year, which is a little more practical. So there's a lot of research to get done, and sort of if in trying to understand which one's the best fit for you. But yes, absolutely, that we do that. I also did care, Denise, sorry, just to answer on, the other question, was this Savannah that was asking about entry requirements. As a sweeping statement, hopefully my admissions officers won't kill me when I say this, but I dare say, consider that we get hundreds of applications from literally all over the world. There's over 135 nationalities studying on campus. That just gives you an idea. Generally, graduate students from the United States, or not by nationality, but who have studied from a US institution, have a extremely high acceptance rate. Because you have institutions that are obviously recognized. You have well over 180 European credits, which is what we require as a general requirement for entry. And it is one of the categories of international students that have the highest retention rate as well. So it's looking very rosy, put it that way. So we're not concerned. It's actually more difficult for an undergrad, simply because we're not test optional. We do require 3 advanced placements, which I know a lot of institutions in the US, are starting to drop off. But so crazily enough, it's harder to enter sometimes as an undergrad than as a graduate. But as a graduate, since we don't do GRE, we don't do GMAT, don't need the APs, then it's not so concerned about GPA, more about what you studied. It's a pretty high. It's pretty positive.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And a lot of international institutions are really excited by US students in the classroom, I think, also just for the engagement level and what they bring. All right, we've got a question around, are there programs for business students interested in working in fashion houses of global luxury? So I don't know if you're talking about the design part of that or the management part of that.
For BSB, it would be the luxury management 1-year master's. That's exactly, but again, that would be in the administrative and management side, not the actual artistic or creative side of it.
Same.
Right. So that's for France, and also on Cattolica has a program too.
Yes.
Global luxury management. But again, it's on the management side. There are other ones on the fashion side, but not with these particular institutions. All right, Daniela asked, what is some advice you would give to those writing personal statements or letters applying to the program? And really good question, Daniela. You're asking, I know grad programs ask for an essay and a letter of intent. So these can be a little bit different than what happens at the undergrad level for a US institution. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about that personal statement?
My personal thought on this is that you have to think about yourself as a brand, and you have to be able to communicate your brand values to a prospective consumer, to a customer. You have to think of the university as somebody that's sort of like buying a service from you, because you have to be able to prove that you're going to provide value to that institution by being accepted and by studying there. So whether that be by being very clear in what your employment goals are, why you think you would have a unique experience to bring to a particular program at that campus, what you feel would be a differentiating factor for you, and why you could thrive in the environment that's offered by that campus. I think those are all, this is the time to start thinking about it more like how you'll be writing your materials for a dream job, I think, at least in the context of BSB, I can say that for sure, but I think the same is true for Católica. I think that none of us want to read sort of like the generic, not that it's generic, but like I struggled through this in the past, and this is why I should be going there. Not to say that it doesn't have value, but now we're kind of looking for a little bit more sort of cohesive and intentional thought behind what you're trying to do.
Well, and I think, Joe, you're also saying that you have to demonstrate why you are a good fit for this program. So you have to demonstrate knowledge, enough knowledge of like what you know of this program and why your experiences are going to match that.
I'm just going to add to that. I think in general, even when I attend workshops all over and different providers, and you know, there are so much workshops on entry requirements and writing good application statements and all that kind of stuff. One thing that we stand out, we're different. That doesn't necessarily mean good or bad. It's just different, period. Is it's not so much for us in terms of what, like, you know what Joe was saying, for example, like imagine it's a work application, right? So like, this is what you can bring. It is about what you can bring, but we also need to be reassured you're going to be happy, just because there are, I mean, just look at the example of these two universities. We have so many programs in common, but we don't teach the same thing. We're all going to take a different angle. For us, it's really important. It's almost like a reassurance for us that we know that you understand what you're going to go study, because there are some students, thankfully not so much from the United States, but there are some students that will just click on the apply button and submit, you know, like any sort of motivation letter, thinking that, well, I'm applying for management, so, you know, I want to be a manager. Like, okay, but every university is going to offer something different. So do the research to reassure that institution, that it's not just about entering the institution, it's about being happy at the institution. How do I know that you're going to be happy here, even if I admit you? Because I'm assuming you've got the entry requirements, otherwise you wouldn't even click on the apply button. But if you have the entry requirements and you are clicking on apply, have you done the research? Have you understood what this university angle on that program is? And is there anything that we don't know from your transcript? Is there anything we don't know from your CV? Is there anything that needs to be addressed? And that is similar in a way to a cover letter, right? You don't just repeat your CV. So yeah, but reassure us that you've done the research. There's a higher chance that you'll be happy here for that.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. Thank you both. So we have time for one more question. It looks like Ivana had a question in regards to the Italian consulate, where she was wondering, saying the consulate has not opened applications. I don't know if COVID is affecting times or if this is normal.
Okay. The application for visa, correct, has not opened yet. no surprise. I mean, consider that again, like you see, even just us, we haven't even finished our deadlines yet. So of applications. So yes, there isn't the official visa process for Italian universities has not opened yet. And we don't even know, the own Italian institutions haven't got the ministry's document saying, okay, guys, we're going, you know, this is kicking off live, like as of this date, and this date changes every year. I don't think the pandemic is going to cause any issues, particularly. That may come as a surprise, but everything went online as of last year. So, you know, you're getting, we have had US students apply and come even physically. And again, actually, may I take this opportunity because we didn't touch on it during the COVID slide of Denise, by the way. A lot of institutions, pretty much all of them, at least in Italy, are going to be offering online course as well. Just as a backup, coming to the place is obviously a whole different experience, and we've spent the last hour talking about that. But just as an FYI, if things do go a bit pear-shaped, just so you know, it's not the end of the story. Things can also go online. But yes, the applications haven't opened. You need to check with every single university when their deadlines are, and keep eyes open with that university on what their applications are going to be when it kickstarts.
Great, thank you. Looks like we have 1 more minute. I'm going to answer this last question and then we're going to wrap up. This is a really great question. Are there students of all ages attending schools? Meaning, like, it's not just, you know, a student who's 22, there's also some older adults as well.
With regard to BSB, absolutely. I mean, I think that's kind of common though, generally speaking in Europe, when you're talking about management programs and business programs. Also because of how the undergraduate system works in Europe, that it's not uncommon that, you know, you have people finishing their undergraduate degree and they're 26 or 27. Not that that's always the greatest solution, but that can happen and does. And so, yeah, you'll be with a very diverse age population in all of the programs at BSB. And I don't mean to speak for Aisha, but I think that's probably true at Cattolica as well, at the master's level.
Expectation management. We don't do a lot of it. I dare say sometimes in Italy, in generally, there's not a big culture. I studied in the UK, for example. I know that mature students as well are something common. Not so common in Italy. There is a reason for that. I mean, no institution has an age limit. That's illegal. Like, obviously there's nowhere will you ever hear or find someone say you can't apply because you're over 29, or, you know, but the realistically, especially for the programs that require internships, if you are older, it means, well, not only for you, of course, personally, you're going to be surrounded by at least in Cattolica, by people who have just recently finished a degree, or at the most have 2 years work experience, maybe a gap year, but that's usually the most it goes. I'm not talking about the executive programs. Obviously, executive are for people working with work experience. But in general, if you're going to go with an internship and you're older, it generally means you've had already some experience. You may be overqualified. They may find some employers may be a bit discouraged in offering you, allow me in quotation, to offer just an internship. So it depends per program. It's well worth checking, but let's say that most programs will be for students with, just out of university, or at the most 2 years work experience. But there is always the the occasional mature student, but that's something we need to discuss in person in terms of if you're comfortable with that, and if you know what could be the limitations once you're here. That's it.
All right. Well, I want to thank both of you so much for coming, and especially Aisha for showing up in the middle of the night. And Joe, thank you for gracing us with all your brilliance. And so everybody, I will be sending a recording of this out. And if you have questions, reach out to me, reach out to Aisha, reach out to Joe. You've got some new best friends. So thank you all. I hope you feel inspired, and I hope you feel ready for your next steps. Thank you.
Yeah, good luck, everyone.
Stay safe. Thank you.
Yeah.